Hi everybody, it is Kerrie here at the North East Autism Society. It's time for our pre-recorded session, and again we have the wonderful Kieran Rose with us, the autistic advocate, who has coming to the end of his hashtag Take the Mask Off campaign. And we haven't been on for a little while, but we wanted to jump back on to make sure you got all the information that you needed and that you're still following and liking and sharing the campaign, because it's been a massive success so far. So today we're going to be covering the topic of taking the mask off safely, what that looks like, what that might mean to you, and some of the considerations around that. So hopefully if you see this at a later date, please like, comment, share, and feel free to ask any questions. So hi Kieran, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Kerrie. How are you?
I'm very good. Yes, very good. It's the Great North Run on Sunday, so
oh yes.
Yes, so I've done limited training, but I will get through it because it's all power of the mind. I'm telling you.
Of course, yes.
So yeah, so to any of our families out there that are doing the Great North Run, I hope to see you there. And yeah, we'll all get each other through, basically. So you're coming to the end of the campaign, Kieran?
Yes.
So how has it gone?
It's gone very well. Just before we go anywhere, I've got a cat leaping around me. So if the computer just flies or it goes dark, it'll be because of him.
That's brilliant. I'm sure we've got lots of cat fans out there. That's fine.
It's gone phenomenally well. Much better than, well, I didn't really have any expectations when Hannah and I started it. We didn't really know what was going to happen with it, but it's gone worldwide and it's reached so many people. And so many people are now, because we're entering the last week and it's kind of like a summing up week of what's gone over the last sort of 6 weeks. Loads and loads of people have just come on my Facebook page, and I've seen them commenting all over the place on social media, just saying what a huge difference it's made, and that there's such now a wealth of information online that didn't exist before as well. So, you know, it's such a huge resource for any parent or any autistic person.
Absolutely, I think it's been amazing, and we've certainly seen the amount of traffic that you've had, and the likes and the shares and the tweets and all the rest of it. I think it's been fabulous, and I think it's allowed a discussion to start around something that's really important and is often overlooked really in society, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, obviously the nature of masking is that it would be overlooked,
Absolutely.
but it seems to have been overlooked by professionals as well, which is the real dangerous kind of side of it, that if that's not being addressed by professionals, if they're not recognizing it, then it can't be addressed publicly. So that's why we did the campaign.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so today we're talking, I suppose, about this idea of taking the mask off safely and what that might mean. And I imagine that that's a very personal experience, so there isn't any kind of right or wrong or to-do list, you know, the instruction manual that comes with this. It's obviously a very personal experience for that individual. But what in very simple terms, what does this mean, taking the mask off?
Well, you're absolutely right. There is no a true way of doing it, kind of thing. It is very much down to the individual, but just as a general kind of basis, the biggest thing that you can do if you are an autistic person, or well, we'll talk about autistic people first. If you're an autistic adult and you are wanting to take your mask off, the first thing that you can do is accept yourself. So that means exploring yourself, exploring what autism means to you, exploring who you are, exploring how you relate to other people, and also, you know, getting having conversations with other autistic people as well, because the best way that we can explore ourselves is through other people's eyes, and other people's experiences. So, you know, I strongly encourage all autistic people to go out, seek each other out, talk about your lives, talk about how autism fits you and how you see the world and how they see the world, and compare and contrast them, because you know, you get such a bigger autistic people go through their lives, and you know, lives are difficult for us. It's you know, that's a given, and in order for someone to learn more about themselves and learn how to unmask, it's important that autistic people can get a wider worldview of what it means to be autistic, and not just their own personal perspective. Because so many people, even through the campaign, when we did the week on stimming, so many people didn't realise how much of what they do is stimming. And they didn't recognise that in themselves until they realised that other people were doing it as well. And it's kind of learning about yourself like that. So that's really the biggest thing. And from an outside perspective, and this applies to parents as well, the biggest thing that can happen there is supporting your autistic person and creating a safe environment for them to be themselves naturally. Now, obviously, from a parental point of view, you don't really have control of that in school or outside of the home, but you as a parent are their safe bubble. So, you know, if you can create a home environment where your child can safely spin around, make noises, do echolalia, you know, whatever it is that they do in order to, in their natural state, if you can encourage that as much as possible, it creates a safe place where they can come in and they can lose the stress that's happened. You know, and a lot of it spins around looking after yourself as well, physically and mentally, helping your child, or as an adult, learning your child's triggers, and seeking out strategies to avoid those triggers, and or if they have to go through those triggers, what can you do to minimize the impact of those triggers? You know, ear defenders are a really good thing. So many autistic children have ear defenders now.
Yeah.
And it helps. It truly does help. I steal my son's ear defenders quite a lot.
Yeah, I love them. I've tried them. They're brilliant. Fantastic.
They are really, really good. No, I mean, they don't. And that's the thing. A lot of what applies to autistics being able to unmask applies to the general population.
Absolutely.
And it's things like that, really. It's just kind of being aware of yourself, or being aware of your autistic person, and then seeing what you can do to support them to be themselves.
And I was talking to a parent the other day about this, which relates to masking quite nicely, about when many of our families go out in the community and they get the tuts and they get the stares and they get the looks. So this person in particular had an incident in a supermarket, which then turned out, you know, ended in a position where the parent felt really rubbish, as a lot of our families do.
Yeah.
Now, in that instance, do you have any tips or anything, Kieran, you know, when that happens? Because families really want their children to be themselves, and they want them to, you know, be happy, be absolutely happy. But unfortunately, we know, which is why we do this campaign, society is cruel, and society still has a long way to go in understanding. So as a dad, really, as a parent, and as an autistic person, would you have any tips for families when that happens, when you get that look?
I'm presuming you want the polite version.
Yeah, the polite version, the professional version.
I mean, it's hard, isn't it? Especially when you are dealing with someone who has a very limited understanding of what's going on. And you tend to find, it's not to be discriminatory, but you tend to find it's older people that have these reactions. And it's kind of, you know, in my day, I would have got a clip around the ear or whatever. But I think in a lot of those cases, you have to tell yourself that it's the other person that has the problem. It's not your child that has the problem. It's not you that has the problem. You know, as a parent or as an autistic adult, you are not the cause of whatever their issue is. They are the ones that have the issue, and they are the ones that need to learn to deal with it. And if they can't deal with it, it's tough.
Yeah.
You know, we live in this world as much as anybody else does.
No, I agree. And that was certainly the advice that I would give to families as well. And I think it's about taking a really deep breath, isn't it? And looking at it as actually their problem, not your child's problem. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
I know some families have started to
sorry.
No, carry on, Kieran, carry on.
No, I was just going to say what you were saying there. It's like we talked about before, about in one of the other videos, about how judgmental society is. And are you still there, Kerrie? Because you
I'm here, yes, I'm here. Yep. I can hear you.
Yep. It's that NIAS Wi-Fi.
NIAS connection.
We talked before about how judgmental society can be and how judgmental people are, because they have a limited idea about something and take that as fact. And I wouldn't expect any parent in that kind of situation to stand up to anybody and kind of, you know, start reeling off a list of autism facts or trying to educate someone in the supermarket. Yep. And you're right, it is about, you know, just take a deep breath and, you know, just step away from the situation. Don't get in a confrontation with someone, because if someone is willing to accost you in a supermarket and complain about your child, they've got some serious issues themselves.
Absolutely, yeah, I would agree. I think it's really difficult for families. Can you still hear me, Kieran? You're breaking up a little bit. Can you hear me?
First of all, and then again, like I said, started engaging online with other autistic people, meeting other autistic adults in public, you know, so learning to socialize with autistic people, which I'd never really done before. And then I got a major sense of fitting in, you know, that I'd never really had before. You know, I had with my wife and I had with my family, but outside of the home, I'd really felt that before. And it was only when that really started happening that I started to think, you know, actually, there's nothing wrong with me. You know, and I had that thought always in the back of my mind that there's something wrong. I know I was hitting these walls in terms of, you know, having friendships and having all these issues that I didn't really understand. And it's only since I started engaging with other autistic people and realizing that I'm not alone, realizing that I am not at fault, that, you know, that there's this whole world out there that has these very strict and rigid ways of living, which are rubbish, effectively, you know, but everybody seems to apply to them for some reason. And it's kind of that just because I don't do that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with me. And that's kind of, and it was like a light bulb moment in my head. And that's when I started to sort of, you know, like I said, be very introspective, but be very outrospective as well. And it's kind of, and that learning about myself through other people really was the key thing that really helped me to unmask.
And I imagine you feel better being around like-minded people. So I can imagine, because I'm thinking about myself, that there are certain people that you feel more comfortable with because you can be more of Kieran with certain people.
Absolutely, and not just people as well, certain environments as well. Obviously at home I feel completely safe, and with other people in different environments I can feel safe, but not necessarily on my own in the same environments. It's just it's a matter of kind of, like I said about being introspective and figuring out your triggers, it's also figuring out where you're safe and where you feel safe. And if you feel safe, you're going to be more naturally you anyway. And it's being around, surrounding yourself as best you can with non-judgmental people is probably the best way to look at it.
It's probably the best thing for everyone, really, isn't it? You know,
and it's hard because obviously, you know, you have family and you can't necessarily pull away from judgmental people in your family and things like that. So, but then the way that I've always addressed that is kind of just drip feeding information. People learn by osmosis. They pick things up without even realizing, and it's kind of, you know, it's a hard slog with certain people, but you can get there in the end. Some people are never going to understand or change or even want to, but, you know, that's their issue again, like we said about the people in the shops and out in public.
I think that's so important, actually, what you've touched on, that family link, because we do work with some people who the families just aren't accepting, or maybe they're at that point of denial still, where they've never accepted a child, young person or adult is autistic, and families have done just what you've said. So they've left the little book about autism on the side, or they've, you know, dropped a leaflet into the middle of the book that they're reading. And I think that's a really nice way of doing it, like what you're saying, just drip feeding little bits of information, so, you know, people can become educated around it and learn to accept people, because I think that must be so difficult, particularly if you've got a family member that you're close to in your life and they're still saying to you, you know, stop doing that, or stop twiddling your hair, stop clapping your hands, or whatever it is. That must be so hard. Because I suppose we always assume when we look at this, we always think it's about society out there that's got the problem. But unfortunately, in some cases, you have people that are really close to you that have that problem, don't you? Mums, dads, grands, aunties, uncles, whoever. And that must be really tough for families.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. Like, you hit upon a key point there with society, because we are society. All of us are society. Whether it's your uncle, your brother, your cat, your dog. You know, it's everybody that surrounds us. The people and things that we have in our lives make up society, and it is difficult. And I had a really interesting comment on. I did an article the other week as a community article about unmasking in the workplace and disclosing in the workplace. I had loads and loads of responses for it. It was brilliant. One of the comments that I got afterwards when I posted it in a certain group was a really good idea, and said, if you're considering disclosing to a colleague or an employer or whoever it is, start dropping autism into the conversation. So, you know, just to get a general feel of how they react to the conversation. And then, you know, if and maybe say, oh, my nephew's autistic, and this is what they do, and so start building it up and building it up so that you can get a sense of how that person is going to react if you actually tell them. And,
absolutely, yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing, like doing it with family members and stuff. It's kind of just bringing it into the conversation, introducing it, and trying to show that it isn't a scary thing, and it doesn't have to be a scary thing, and it's not naughty behavior, and it's not bad behavior, or people aren't doing things just to freak everybody else out kind of stuff, and or it's like just because someone's blunt doesn't mean they're being rude. They're two very different things, and it's kind of so just introducing things like that step by step, drip feeding. If you've got a problem person in your life, then again, they might never understand, but unless you make the effort, you're never going to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose we're coming to the end of this video, and therefore the end of your wonderful campaign, Kieran, really. And I think we've had some really interesting discussions over the last 5 weeks. I've certainly learned a lot from yourself and from some of the posts and the blogs that some of the people you've been working with have put out there. I think it's been amazing. I asked you this a few weeks ago, and it's probably, I don't know if it'll be the same message, but what would be your one take-home message if somebody was just tuning in right now and they hadn't seen any of the other stuff about masking? What message would you tell the person that's tuning in relation to masking, if you could sum it up? Put you on the spot.
7 questions in one there. What would I want them to take away from all of this? I just want them to be more accepting. We've moved well beyond autism awareness. We've left that far behind us now, and it's not even about autism. It's about neurodiversity and accepting that different people have different brains, and that makes them act differently, and it's not a bad thing. And if you see a child having a tantrum, don't step in and start totting up the mum or the dad or whoever. There could be a reason for it, and it's not necessarily a bad reason. It could be that the child is hurting or in pain or overwhelmed, or and it's not always about. We talk so much about behaviour, and behaviour is rubbish. Really, it's not even a word that should exist, because everybody reacts differently to different things. Everybody behaves in different ways, and just be more accepting of that.
Yeah, and just be yourself.
Yeah.
When you feel safe to do so.
When you feel safe to do so. Yeah. That's the important thing, when you feel safe.
Absolutely. Well, Kieran, it's been a pleasure. So to people that are watching the video, please get in touch if you need to talk about anything we've discussed in this video or over the previous 6 weeks. I can promise you that you're going to see more of Kieran, because we have some exciting plans ahead, hopefully. Kieran, I have to say, you're a total inspiration, and I think I think just bringing this topic and everything that you talk about and everything that you do on a daily basis, because for people that don't know, Kieran does this every day of his life. He's helping so many people, and does it in his own time without even any thought for himself some days. So, you're doing an amazing job, and you really are an inspiration, I think, in the field of autism and autistic thinking. So thank you so much for coming along. And I'm going to miss our weeks together.
I know.
But we'll definitely plan more stuff in. So I'm going to end the video now. Thank you very much, everyone. Please don't forget to follow the campaign, have a little look at some of the stuff that's been posted, and follow Kieran's page as well, which is the Autistic Advocate. And I shall see you all very soon. Thanks, bye.
Bye-bye.